I got up at 6:15 that morning. I hopped on the train all the way to Shin Osaka Station, where I nearly got lost and nearly missed the train due to confusion on how to print tickets I had pre-purchased. And also, I may or may not have broken one of the gates, just trying to get my ticket through it as well. Train bound for departure at 7:40, I made it at 7:36 or so, with tickets in hand in my reserved seat, on my way to the first layover station, Mihara, and the other seat next to me was empty. However, with my familiarity with Amtrak back in the States, I remembered that these tickets are in fact reserved, meaning there was a non-zero chance that someone at one of the stops on the way to Mihara had that seat purchased. So I figured it was best if I just didn't bother with that for now. With my time coming to a close in Japan, I'm definitely gonna miss the easy access to public transit. Where I live back home, it would take about 15 to 20 minutes to drive to work and 2 hours to bus there. Biking would also be approximately 2 hours, and reminder, I live in a very hilly area. And walking would be 3 hours, so I am quite spoiled on the public transit, both in affordability and accessibility, and I'm really gonna miss it. Once I made it to Mihara, I had to take a transfer to Tadanoumi, and I immediately got One Pieced. I think I only made it partway through the Wano arc last time I read the manga. I did get a little bit lost and confused around Mihara, but there was some very nice signage right next to the bus stop. So of course my nerd ass goes straight to the maps trying to figure out how to get to Tadanoumi. What makes it better is, remember, I failed my course, so I can't understand this. What's that off to the side? I don't know. A Wi-Fi emitting touchscreen. I was a little scared to open that QR code. I was worried it might summon something. And I messed around with it a little bit before I remembered, oh, right, I need to catch the next train. Though I do like his little dance. Except, nope, I'm still distracted. Look at this beautiful fountain off to the side over here. And over here were some really nice looking statues. Good news, I got lost again on the outside of the building, with all the bridges and archways and whatnot. That rock wall, basin, whatever thingy definitely implied as such. And no, I didn't see it. Turns out, in my fumbling around and getting lost, I missed the next train to Tadanoumi. Don't worry, I can just wait for the next one in 90 minutes. Whee! At least I have a Shinkansen Shokuji with me. I've been warned, cautiously warned, that all the food in the Shinkansen meals are absolutely amazing and delicious and spectacular. As for their vegetarian, vegan options, at least the ones at Mihara Eki, I mean no disrespect, this is just a statement of fact, the shopkeeper that sells these, they did not have any. There were 2 that contained meat, and there were 2 that contained fish only. I hope the people next to me, or at least several seats away, don't mind my mumbling to myself. This isn't a self-heating one, I don't think. There weren't any fancy cords. Wow, that is a very squishy... I don't think this is what... This has to be, like, styrofoam. Itadakimasu. Whenever I encounter quail eggs, I always remember my grandpa on my mom's side. He used to run a farm. He has long since sold it off. Anyway, Grandpa used to have a farm. I don't remember all the animals he had, but he also had quails. And I remember so distinctly, I was 4 years old with my cousin, and we were stomping on the quail eggs. Don't worry, they weren't fertilized quail eggs. Anyway, 10 out of 10, do recommend. It was around 11:30, that was when I boarded the train, and I was off to Tadanoumi. This one, maybe I'm confused on the signage or whatever, but this one was under the JR Shinkansen brand or company, but it was not a Shinkansen, it was a regular commuter railway. It took about 30 odd minutes to get there, and I spent most of it staring out the window because Japan is beautiful. Here, let's watch some together. This is the gift shop that's set up next to the ferry station on the way to Okunoshima. This is also where you bought your ferry tickets. Don't worry, I made sure to miss the 12 o'clock ferry and I had to wait for the 2 o'clock one. So I bought some of their gelato ice cream, sat outside, enjoyed the view as I listened to the background music they were playing. Took a nice scenic lap around the town too. It is very beautiful, very pretty. The line started piling up around 1:30, so that was when I hopped in, but then I took a moment to stare at the water. Off in the distance, menacingly, slowly, with great dread, the ferry approaches. It's like no one wants to leave early for some reason. Soon enough, we were all led aboard. The whole process took about 15 minutes. The route itself from the boat starting to ending was 12 and a half minutes. Here it is condensed to 10 seconds. Okay, this next part of the video isn't going to be as fun. Feel free to skip ahead to this timestamp if you so choose. Let's talk about Japanese war crimes in World War II and the modern opinions thereof. Let me say first and foremost that I am not a World War II expert, especially not on Japanese history pertaining to World War II. I did a reasonable amount of research in preparation for this lecture, but please don't take it as I am the authority, because I most certainly am not. The most prominent thing you'll find on Okunoshima are the gas production remnants. There are quite a few buildings littered around that have been utterly, decimated over the decades of neglect that used to be factories that would build poison gas tanks. The two compounds that were listed in the signage you see littered around are ypres and lewisite, ingredients used in mustard gas. Where we're at now are the emergency shelters, in case the military higher-ups need to escape attacks or just the consequences of their actions. Then this is where they would flee to, these underground bomb shelters. There was a poison gas museum on the island as well. Unfortunately, in an effort to save money, I did not go into the museum. But the last time I went into a museum in Japan, early on in the trip, there were some extremely vague signage about the war during the 40s, so maybe this is me being prejudiced, or maybe this is me just being a bit cautious in the face of how little the Japanese will really speak about what happened in World War II. Reasons usually ranging from, it's not polite to talk about, to, oh, well, what happened was actually overstated, to outright denial that it ever happened, or at least that they ever had a part in it. As for their views on the European side of World War II, admittedly, I am not the expert on that either. It wasn't like I went around asking people throughout the course of my study abroad, hey, what are your thoughts on World War II, and what do you think your country and our country have to say about it? Because that wasn't really the focus of my trip. But when I was looking up Okunoshima at the behest of a friend, I found on the Google Maps there were these locations, like this other place, which was used to store the liquid compounds of ypres and lewisite. And seeing all of this on this island, I already knew going in that the Japanese weren't famously open for their involvement in World War II. But these buildings have not been torn down, they still stand. But they're slowly disintegrating. Are they worth putting in the effort of restoration? Where exactly do you draw the line between historical preservation and moving on from the past? And should we impose our standards onto someone else? Is something like this worth keeping around in the modern age? If you look at the black streaks, they tried to incinerate it before. Whether out of guilt or wanting to hide evidence, I could not say I wasn't there. And this sobering reality about the horrors of World War II, again, coming from someone who was born the millennium after it, off the top of my head, in the moment, all I could think of was, this is the most acknowledgement I have seen thus far. There is definitely some light censorship at play and polite ignoring of the elephant in the room. You definitely have to do some digging if you want to find out, or at least digging through Japanese resources. It's not that hard to find if you look through other country lenses, who they were tied with and what atrocities they committed since then. Frankly speaking, the poison gas is kind of low on the list. For most Americans, what they'll think of is Pearl Harbor, a surprise military strike on the naval base in Oahu, Hawaii in 1941, when at the time of attack, the United States was a neutral country. Clarification and editing here. We were sending aid to Britain before the Pearl Harbor attacks, so we were on Britain's side at least. We were just not involved in a combat sense, at least as per what I found. For the chronically online with a dark streak, you might think of Unit 731, a supposed lumber mill when in actuality it was a torture facility. If you're feeling polite, you could call it human experimentation, but come on. Injections of diseases, rape and forced pregnancy, exposures to STDs, starvation, dehydration, chemical warfare testing, weapons testing, environmental torture such as extreme cold, extreme heat, and vivisections. That is not an exhaustive list, and Unit 731 was not the only one. The Wikipedia article lists a total of 8 known units, Unit 731 being in the middle of them, and when Japan was defeated at the end of World War II, all of the prisoners were killed. They were given rope to check themselves out, so to speak, and those who refused were injected with lethal compounds. The Japanese Imperial Army have committed countless death marches and massacres during World War II against China, Korea, Indonesia, Philippines, Vietnam, and allied prisoners of war. There were also comfort women, a polite euphemism for sex slaves, women from all surrounding nations, though the majority being from Korea, were kidnapped from their homes to work as sex slaves for the Japanese Imperial Army. Not just adult women, but young girls too. Not all the women were kidnapped when they were raped, though. Some of them were just raped in their homes and then promptly murdered, with the bodies simply left behind in the open. It's not like there were any witnesses in the village anymore. Did you know that South Korea had a ban on Japanese imagery in their media until the turn of the millennium? For some, the memory of World War II is impossibly large and overwhelming. For others, it's a common reality of life, not scary, not imposing, just there. And for others, it is hidden deep beneath the surface, hidden behind concrete barriers in which you have to find through the obscured lens of the ocean. While the shadow in and of itself is easy to ignore, it is still there. And considering how popular the idea is to just not talk about it anymore, and just how distant the memory is becoming, and how difficult it is to get a government and population to change their minds, especially when it comes to wrongdoings and protests, what else can you do? World War II denialism and historical renegotiations, let's say, and reinterpretations are quite prevalent. It's not something you'll see very common and open, but it's there. Meanwhile, we still have evidence lying around. Now, is it really worth for me to criticize them when my country was scantly affected by them, while Japan's neighbors are still hurting to this day? But with every passing day, the memory goes slightly more distant. Infrastructure crumbles and people die. And even as recently as 2022, as the Japanese government pressured people into rewriting textbooks to omit certain passages, ones that weren't exactly savory to talk about, as we lose some of the last people who remember seeing the effects of World War II. Will Japan ever acknowledge what they did? Will they continue simply waiting out until people stop asking about it? Will they demolish and hide more things? Renegotiate history? 2010s and 2020s America have proven a deeply scary time for me, but I can't really say that it was to this severe of an extent. Though for many on either side of the Pacific, it has been. Though who am I to say that mine or my friends' experiences were as tragic as those of Unit 731? Is my foot in the door to staying long-term in Japan really worth it, if this is what it's costing? But you can't really live in any country without there being some shadow of war crimes and maltreatment, can you? Find me a country that has done no wrong, and I will gladly submit a visa application. Until then, I just need to ask myself, and I believe the viewers at home can also ask yourself, how much Historical revisionism. Can you stomach? Look at all the wild bunnies! Whee! This is the main tourist attraction for Okunoshima. These rabbits weren't trained to be friendly, but rather habituated. They themselves figured out over the years that they're very friendly to people. So there's rabbit food for sale. I hiked over most of the island and I found that the bunny rabbits were just kind of sprinkled throughout most of where the people would be and not so much out in the wilderness. And as you can see, they just come bouncing up. So long as you don't mind the fact that there is rabbit waste all over the place, I'm sure it's fine. It is probably impossible to clean it all up. And it was a bit morbidly curiosity-inspiring to see their, toilet locations. Exhibit A. You can also bring your own food if you so choose. But they do recommend don't bring sweet treats, bread, refined starches, and the like, just whole vegetables. And just to make sure that the rabbits have eaten all the food that you've provided them. Because leftover food isn't food for just the wild rabbits, there are also wild boars somewhere around here. Though I was not so lucky as to find one, and it wasn't like I wanted to find out. Oh! Ah! Oh my god! There was even signage and rules on how to properly feed the rabbits, such as don't overfeed them, don't feed them in the road to avoid car accidents, don't feed them refined sugars, don't feed them too much fruit, most especially not bread. Which is a tad funny because the gift shop on the island sold bread treats. For human consumption, I should clarify. They came with signage that said don't feed these to the rabbits. Now, there was a hotel on site. I was warned by a friend it costs no less than $1 bazillion US per night. Or, excuse me, let me convert that. 156 bazillion yen. So this is not where I spent the night. I had until 5 p.m. to take the last ferry back to the mainland. Oh, and also the cute little bunny rabbits. Hey, did I mention already that you're not really supposed to touch the rabbits? Okay, so I don't know if this really counts as breaking the rules or not. Just to play it safe, maybe don't do what I'm doing in this video, or in the next one either. But the visual of being swarmed in wild bunny rabbits definitely was a bit, hard to pass up, you know? I mean, come on, just look at this right here, and look at that right there. Here, look at this visual that's coming up. Look at the sheer army of bunnies coming at me. Are these all like one large inbreeding group, much like the wild dogs in Ukraine, or like, I believe, most American buffalo? Or do they have like different clans? Maybe clan isn't the right word. Okay, I just looked it up, and some of the appropriate terms are colonies or herds. Apparently Fluffle is also in there. I don't trust that one, but also, like, look at these bunnies and tell me I'm gonna doubt that. This is a reality of my own choosing, and I say I'm drowning in a fluffle of bunnies. Just don't mind the fact that I'm manipulating them into drowning on me by sprinkling the food on myself. Hopefully I don't get fined for this. Again, this is not a how-to guide. Please don't do as I'm doing. Yeah. No matter how tempting and adorable this might be, you know? Or the fact that I'm just gonna let this play out for a while. At 4:30, I kind of had my fill of bunnies and hiking and the horrors of World War II. That gave me only about 2.5 hours of time on the island, and I think that was fine for me. Turns out, not the ferry I went on, but a different, smaller, pink ferry was also going back and forth. Out of morbid curiosity, I approached them and asked if my ticket was acceptable, and it was. So there I was. It was crowded to the brim, and it didn't really want to record people. So here's a very careful swing around in order to get the ocean behind me.
The Cucumber Visitor Ferry. The ferry will arrive at Talanumi Port in 15 minutes. Please note the location of the life jackets, as you may need them in case of an emergency.
I had to walk 30 minutes to get to the hotel after hiking for 2.5 hours. That sure was great. But I saw some budding cherry blossoms. I might have missed cherry blossom season in Japan again, but at least I saw some. And then I couldn't help but notice just how pretty the clouds looked as they were approaching sunset, and then I just kinda needed to stare at that for a while. Maybe even pull out my camera and start recording as I walked through. It reminded me of some of the paintings that I would see littered around the LDS church locations that I went to. I don't consider myself religious anymore. I'm not a regular church attender anymore. But I don't know, the site always reminds me of that. And here comes the ryokan. However, it's not that building. You have to go around it to go to the other building behind it.
Reminds me of home. Picking the absolute skeeziest hotels because they're cheapest. I sure hope I find meth in the room.
Well, here's the room. It's great. Yay! Yo! Whoa! Suge! God, I would kill for this view. Or maybe I wouldn't. Maybe I would just spend, Ryokusen 500 yen desu.
Guys, chat. Gamers, even. This is the mattress and this is the duvet. It's literally just a massive pillow. And don't worry, there's like 10 more in the closet. I can create a Princess and the Pea kind of thing going on here.
Okay, don't make fun of me. They offered this.
Fellas, I don't know if I can ever leave this bed again. I have 3 nice warm duvets looking at the Japanese ocean side. I'm sorry, I can't move out. I have to stay here for the rest of my life.
Now, I didn't record much on the night of my stay in the ryokan, so I hope you don't mind that I balanced my phone in the window, recorded some B footage on the morning of while I packed up, and then I'm just gonna tell you in detail as opposed to, showing you. That's what all good creators do, right? They tell instead of show. Anyway, after dressing in the yukata, I went over to the shared bathroom. Yeah, there were no private bathrooms, there were only the shared toilets and then the shared showers that were attached to the onsen. And then I saw that they had bathroom scales. They weren't digital, they were the old kind of scale. They were also in metric, a unit I'm not super familiar with, even though I was taught how to convert it in school. So I checked my weight, I went into the onsen, stared at the sunset, skipped dinner that night because I didn't like what the scale told me. Woke up the next morning, went to the other gendered onsen. The great thing about being non-binary and medically in between, you can just kind of go through them both. Don't worry, I went alone both times. Anyway, turns out there's a 10-kilo disparage between the two scales, so I tried to forget about that tiny little meltdown, and then I went on with packing up for the checkout. Something else I probably should have mentioned sooner is that you have to check out your shoes when you check into the hotel. There's a little open cubby area. You just dump your shoes in there, completely open to the public. But thankfully, my shoes were safe and sound, exactly where I left them. The clerk lady was also really nice too. I could get by on basic Japanese, but whenever I was totally stumped, I just pulled out the phone, and we were able to communicate at least somewhat. So if you ever find yourself looking for a cheaper hotel to stay at rather than the one on Okunoshima Island, go to the Shiseido Hoteru. I left a little early, so I spent some time at the train station reading up on the brochures. Barely. If you see me skip ahead a few pages, it's because I found something when I was flicking through it before I turned the camera on. Ta-da! Then I rode to Mihara Eki, where I purchased the other seafood-only bento. Funnily enough, I wasn't really feeling hungry yet. I was tempted to, but I didn't really feel the urge to actually eat, you know? So I waited to eat till we were in motion. And this one didn't have as much of a variety as the other one did. However, I do love unagi. This one being primarily unagi, not a complaint. But if you like seafood, but you're not the biggest fan of barbecue eel, then I hope you don't mind some octopus in the other one. Or if you eat other meats, there's 2 other options at Mihara Eki. Also, cold. There was also a hiccup at the gates of Mihara Station, specifically trying to get the Shinkansen back home, because while I had purchased round-trip tickets, apparently it needed an extra fee too. So minus 3,400 yen later, I was aboard the train. However, this one only went to Okoyama, there was a layover, and then over to Osaka. And I had a bit of a nervous moment about that because my ticket said no layovers, but the conductor said it's fine, so okay. One layover in Okayama later, and I was bound for Osaka. Because I did not have a reserved ticket, I stood the whole time, alongside other people.
Reminds me in 2023 when I took the Amtrak all across continental America and then a bit in Toronto. I still have all the videos on this phone. I just never bothered to upload it all.
Upon making it home was the last place on the list, Vegan Ramen. It's close by Yotsubashi Eki. It was empty for their middle of the day service, so I tried to film around, but then people approached, so I got shy. Here's the water instead. And I ordered vegan shoyu ramen. The general aesthetic of the restaurant, as well as the vegan theme and the price, definitely reminded me of Portland. It did feel a little like home, not gonna lie. As for the taste, it tasted like almost regular ramen. It's really tricky to get something to taste like meat that has zero meat in it. It wasn't like I was missing it, it didn't feel like it was lacking anything, it was just a different flavor. If you have 1800 yen to spend on ramen and you need something vegan, this is the place to go. They have a multilingual menu too. Vegan ramen, done.
Hey gamers, just got back from my trip all the way to Okunoshima. Today's Friday, late afternoon, almost early evening. I'm leaving on Monday. I have to check out of the apartment at 10 a.m. There are still 3 places that I was itching to go to. It was Yotsuba Curry, a curry restaurant near Honmachi Station, Universal Studios Japan, which is like about 45 minutes away by 2 trains, and then of all things, Ice Night, a unmeltable ice cream restaurant in Kobe. I don't know if I can bring myself to go. I'm not sure if I can. I'm so tired. I'm kind of itching to go home, but I'm not exactly excited for how to try to keep it as non-political as possible for my YouTube channel. How immigration customs might treat me when they see in the x-ray my top surgery scars.